Hi, this is Derek from Volition Recording Studio. For those of you that don't know, I recently released my new ebook called The 5 Things I Wish I Knew Before I Started Mixing. Kind of a bit wordy, but this ebook is designed to help those of you that want to learn mixing and that has a lot of problems understanding what you should be doing on it and what really is mixing. So this ebook is designed to tackle that. So if you guys are interested, please check out this ebook. It is for free. I want to help those of you out there that are struggling. I struggled so much learning how to mix and understand what mixing really is until much later. So this ebook would definitely be the bridge to help you go claim the ebook. All right, so we are back, and this is pretty much like an unofficial part series about my ebook, and this is really where I want to talk about the core of this ebook, which is to really teach you how to mix. For today's video, I'm going to talk about really what is mixing, because a lot of people really don't understand what mixing is, or they are confused about what is the result that it should do for their music. Either you're self-producing your own music or you're doing it for someone. You want to have a clear goal of what is the point of mixing, or what it should do for the music. In terms of how you should view mixing, a very simple way to kind of process what mixing is pretty much just think of Photoshop. The opposite of that is pretty much audio. Especially this part 2 is really where the core of this ebook is, where a lot of things actually start. We're specifically talking about balance. So what is balance? So balance specifically to say is, how are the volume levels? There is different ways to manipulate volume. There is automation, there is EQ and compression, where they all interact with volume. Static mixing, same thing. Gain staging, same thing. Pretty much, if I were to give you a pie chart, it's going to mostly be, when it comes to mixing, is 75% of it is really all dynamics in terms of like getting the volume right. I'll say the last 25% of it is pretty much effects, where you make it sound very good. So that's kind of where the fancy stuff is. A lot of people kind of look towards the fun stuff, but not very much of the boring, dry 75% of what really mixing is. And the thing and the reality is, those effects will be very, very useless without good volume manipulation and good balance. So they kind of come hand in hand. So if you're always looking at effects, then
too bad. So sad.
I'll highly say that you should probably look into refining and getting the core components of mixing right, so that when you go to do the effects, it'll just sound even better for the song. So if we're talking about mixing as a whole, it's just nothing more than just a bunch of volume adjustments. I listed all 9 steps or 9 listings of this process of mixing, and it's pretty much, I'll be honest with you, pretty much from 1 to 6 is just all volume. If you don't really understand what makes a good mix, then this is kind of like gonna teach you that a lot of what makes a good mix is really just great balance and understanding how loud things should be and where you should control the volumes of the dynamics of certain things. The first step, which is gain staging, very straightforward. Pretty much what that is you want to control the volume of the track itself. So I'll have a description right in the bottom below. What gain staging really is about is kind of what is the volume of the recorded tracks are. So pretty much what that is that when someone hands you a file, or when someone just finished recording, when you receive and hit play, when you receive the files, load into your DAW and press play, that is its gain level. If you don't touch the volume fader, leave it at 0 and just hit play for those tracks, that is the natural gain volume for it. Sometimes when people do recordings, they either crank up the gain too much, so what that ends up happening is it becomes too loud and it distorts the volume. And number 2 is that maybe their gain is just too quiet. So that's kind of what gain staging does, is that it tackles any weaknesses that the raw recorded tracks have without any alterations. So for after gain staging is static mixing. Static mixing is probably, I'll say, like the core part of mixing. I'll say is really important compared to the rest of the whole mixing process, because this is where you can really mess things up, and this is where you can make everything sound amazing if you can do this part right. So static mixing is just another way to manipulate volume again. Unlike gain staging, this time you actually manipulate the volume faders. So you probably turn things up, turn things down, and start padding, start assigning directions for your sounds. So that's pretty much what static mixing is all about. So the next step is balance check. After you do your initial static mixing and you're happy with it, and assuming you did your gain staging and static mixing well, so balance check is just to see how it sounds. So don't manipulate anything. Try to listen to it on normal volume. Try to duck it down the master volume fader to -30 dps. I generally go for that to kind of just see how it sounds. So that's a good way to kind of see how would it sound on a quieter volume and at normal pace. So, and then after that, the next step for the mixing process is mixing in mono. So we all know when we listen to music nowadays, it's all stereo, so left and right. But then we want to make sure that our mono signals, or the song that we're working on, the mix that we're working on, sounds very good mono. So what that means is there are, if you think about your local superstore or maybe a club or maybe like an EDM festival, or just any big venue music related thing, most of the time they're gonna project mono audio. So what that means is it'll be kind of weird if you play stereo left and right in a concert situation where there are a lot of people that kind of stand anywhere in front of the stage. But then the thing is, if we have our audience in the left, they can only just hear the left side, and if you're standing on the right, you can only hear the right side of it. It's almost like you're hearing your audio kind of pan or just in an opposite direction. So that causes the music listening experience to be very weird. So that is where mixing in mono is very important, to make sure that when there are those live situations, most of the time they should be projecting mono so it sounds balanced. So when you're hearing the audio, like you're hearing my voice right here, is that it sounds very centered, very focused. The next thing for the mixing process is EQ and compression. So after you mixed everything in, like you did all the previous steps leading up to mixing mono, EQ and compression comes next. So EQ and compression, again, is just nothing more than volume manipulation. So it affects volume and controls volume in a more precise manner. So unlike gain staging and static mixing, where they kind of stay in one spot, it won't automate. So for example, what I mean by that is once you set up your static mix or gain stage, they won't move. You can actually just hone in on one specific frequency zone. So unlike gain stage and static mixing, where it controls the overall volume of that one track, let's just say it's a vocal track, what EQing does is that you can focus on a specific frequency spot or zone for the vocals and bring it up or bring it down. The next thing we talk about is compression. Compression is when you go to set your compression, and a basic premise of what compression is that it just squashes audio. So, if you have anything that's loud, it kind of evens it out a little bit, so it doesn't sound grating to the ears. So that's what compression really is, baseline, if we're talking about just basic explanation. But then if you take a deeper look into compression, how it works with audio specifically, it actually not only does it make it flatter or more controlling the peaks, but at the same time, you can control when the compression starts. In situations like if you're hitting a snare drum, you kind of want it to last a little bit longer than kind of the natural sound of it. So that's kind of where compression comes in, where it sustains the sound a little bit longer. So in that sense where you can get the full impact of the snare drum when hit. There is actually an art to it, and I'm not going to be able to explain it for this video, as it's going to be pretty long enough already. And then next we get into balance check number 2. That's kind of where you want to check how everything sounds once again to see how it holds up. And then finally we get into kind of the funnest part of mixing, is the effects and automation. This is kind of where you can be very fancy. You show your skills. You can manipulate audio in a certain way in terms of how you're moving the audio. Maybe it's panning left and right really quickly, like a ping pong effect, or maybe you're doing a glitch effect, or maybe it's pretty much at this point you're making it sound as fancy as possible. This also includes automation, where you want to, maybe it's building up to a big chorus, you kind of want to make it more grandiose or bring up a certain part. Maybe it's a guitar solo, or maybe it's a vocal line. That's where automation comes in, is that you can bring up a certain point and bring down certain points. And then we get into balance check number 3. Generally, in that case, what this means is you want to control your volumes to prepare it for the finale, which is mastering. So this is where balance check number 3 comes in to help you have a moment to see what the whole song is doing. And then finally, we get to the last stage, which is prepare the mix for mastering. So once you're at this stage, you're pretty much just listening to the song, maybe like hundreds of times already, and just making minor adjustments so it's ready to be mastered. Yeah, so when it comes to mixing, pretty much this is the whole process. All mixing engineers, including professionals, advanced, intermediate, beginners, amateur, it doesn't matter what level or stage you're at, everyone that understands good mixing would approach this mixing, I will call mixing recipe or formula, where you should be doing these things, but then in the order of how it should be done, that's all personal and up to you. So there's certain things I will say, even though I did say you can kind of do certain things at different times and you can choose what goes first, what goes last. I will say there are a certain key things in this list that should be done first. Definitely gain stage and static mixing and balance check, I'll say should stay there. Anything else down there can be kind of approached at your own pace. This is all just a starting formula for you, for those of you that don't know how to mix, and it's just a good start, and maybe you might find something different that works best for you. This is a good way to get started, to get a good, number one, just a good idea of really what makes a good mix, because all this stuff is done at one point. 2 is pretty much you want to get it consistent to the point where it becomes second nature. You don't really need to think about what you should be doing next. You know what to do next. And 3 is that you want to get faster at it, more efficient at it. So pretty much that's really the whole idea of mixing. That's really just what mixing really is. So I hope this video was helpful for those of you out there. For you, I didn't really go over the whole mixing process in detail, stage by stage, because trust me, it will take at least a couple hours to do this properly. But if you guys are very interested to learn more about what I discuss and just kind of reinforce the idea and to pretty much understand these stages more precisely and more informatively, I do highly suggest that you head over to the link below. Grab a free copy of my ebook, read it yourself. It'll make more sense. From just simply listening to me, it just sounds like a bunch of words. But as soon as you kind of put it into your own context and read it out, give yourself some time to digest what you just read, and come back to watch this video, it will all make a lot of sense. So please do that. And if you like what you saw today, and if you like the content of my ebook, please share this with other people out there that needs this. And yeah, we'll end it there. See you guys in the next video. We'll be probably talking more in detail for one of these sections on this ebook. But have yourself a great day. We'll see you guys soon.